I just don't know how this continues to happen to Notre Dame. College football fans are willing to look past a lot, more than they're given credit for, even because I think there is, depending on the fan base, negative connotation that fans are viewed as irrational, illogical, etc. I think most fans are willing to look past when you've been beaten by a better team, or are willing to accept, hey, every once in a while, I don't go to my job and I'm at the top of my game every single day. But what they don't generally look past is when you lose to somebody that you have no business losing to, especially in a bye game when you've paid somebody $1.4 million to come to your stadium in exchange for a loss, and instead they pull out a win. And that's exactly what Northern Illinois did on Saturday to Notre Dame. And if this was a one-time thing, I think Notre Dame fans would be willing to go, okay, as long as this doesn't happen again. But this has happened before. When you've already looked past something for the first time, in Marcus Freeman's first year when Notre Dame loses to Ohio State in week 1, okay, on the road against a top 5 opponent, we would have liked to win a game, didn't. Then you lose to Marshall in week 2. First-year head coach, he's going to get it figured out. So losing to Marshall is one of those, like, a few years ago, is one of those, like, okay, this sucks right now, but we're going to be better for it, and it's not going to happen again. And then when it happens again, I don't know how you feel anything other than, like, anger, frustration, and what the hell just happened. Because make no mistake about it, Northern Illinois, if you injected truth serum into him, probably feels like we didn't have any business being in that game. We didn't have any business winning that game. We were supposed to show up, get our asses handed to us, and make sure that we've got a track and field program this year with that $1.4 million. And instead, they beat the Fighting Irish inside Notre Dame Stadium. The talk of the college football world and the Fighting Irish are, unfortunately, on the other side of the talk of the college football world. 1 week after going to Kyle Field and beating a top 20 SEC opponent on the road, you lose to a MAC school, and not even a MAC school that's supposed to win the MAC. That's what Northern Illinois is supposed to do. They're not picked to win the Mid-American Conference in 2024. And they come into your own stadium and beat you. And I don't know how this keeps happening, but I do know that it can't keep happening, because it's one of those that if this were to happen again, if Notre Dame was to somehow lose to a MAC school, group of 5 school, one of the cupcakes on their schedule, there are real legit, like, I don't think Marcus Freeman enters the hot seat after losing to Northern Illinois. But I do think if you can't explain away, if Riley Leonard goes down in a heap yesterday and has a bone sticking out of his leg or something, you can probably say, okay, you get the benefit of the doubt, like players were affected, you lost your starting quarterback, etc. That didn't happen. They just got outplayed by a Mid-American Conference team. And even after it might have appeared as if the officials were trying to give them the damn game, Notre Dame still couldn't take it. There are just some places where on-the-job training is not going to be accepted. When you get to blue blood status, that's just not going to fly. If Marcus Freeman got the chance to be the head coach at Duke before he got to Notre Dame, or pick virtually any other program outside of Alabama, Notre Dame, Texas, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Florida, Georgia, LSU, USC, Michigan, Penn State. I probably go on for a few more schools. If you lose to one of those group of 5 schools in a bye game, it's not the end of the world. It's not looked at with the magnifying glass that it is when it happens at Notre Dame. And when you have to say in a press conference after you've lost to a school that you were projected and predicted to win by dozens of points, and you get to say, well, we've been here before. That is not the defense that you think it is. That is not what you want to say in a press conference after another horribly disappointing loss, when there were people who were already cementing you into the college football playoff after you go to Kyle Field and College Station, get a win, and say, hey, we got a big time win on our resume, and as long as we don't screw the pooch in the two difficult games, in both of the two difficult games we played this year, we're going to the college football playoff. But you got to take care of business in the other 8, the other 9, and you don't. Getting to say, well, we've been here before. We know how to handle losing to somebody that we had no business losing to. We know how to rectify those issues, turn it around, and get better. And Notre Dame may very well do that. They could possibly turn things around and be a great program the rest of the year and be one of the top 12 teams in the college football playoff. But I don't know how you predict that and how you feel really good and solid about it after watching them lose to Northern Illinois at home. I don't know how you put 2 and 2 together there, that you watch them lose to a Mid-American Conference opponent who is overmatched in literally every aspect of the game and still not find a way to win. And I'm not going to sit here and overreact. I'm not going to be super illogical and say, one, Marcus Freeman has to go, or say anything too drastic, because it is still early in the season. And I've been the biggest champion of, you shouldn't have to be expected to be perfect from the get-go to be the best team at the end of this season. Notre Dame could still be the best team at the end of the season. I don't know how they would get to that point, but crazier things have happened, like losing to Northern Illinois at home. But saying in a press conference, we're okay because we've been here before. We've dealt with crushing losses to teams that we had absolutely 100% no business losing to, is not a great look, because losing to those programs has been the beginning of the end of other coaches' downfalls. When Charlie Weis lost to Navy for the first time in 4 decades at Notre Dame, it launched the beginning of the end of his tenure. There was a ton of excitement. There were people not asking how long it would take Charlie Weis to win a national championship at Notre Dame. It was how many national championships was Charlie Weis going to win at Notre Dame? And the answer turned out to be a big, fat, steaming pile of 0. And his tenure started going downhill when they lost to Navy at Notre Dame. And this, again, is not the first time Navy has done this. Brian Kelly lost to Tulsa at Notre Dame. But Marcus Freeman is early in his tenure and was viewed as the guy who was going to step in for Brian Kelly and keep Notre Dame at the level that they had grown accustomed to under Brian Kelly, which was a playoff contender year after year after year, and somebody that could be viewed as one of the 5 to 10 favorites to win the national championship. And losing to Northern Illinois inherently makes you not that. So when you look at Marcus Freeman and his record thus far, coupled with the fact that they have not been great at the sport's most important position, quarterback, in finding those players and developing those players. And I know that there are going to be Notre Dame fans that get in the comments and say, our quarterback recruiting has been spectacular. And that's why you're starting a transfer quarterback for the second straight year, who doesn't look like he's gotten any better since he left the program that he came to you from. There are legitimate questions that have to be asked and need to be answered by Marcus Freeman in the next couple of weeks because of what happened when you play Northern Illinois and can't find a way to get a win. Now, that can all be washed away eventually. And you can look back at that and it's like, phew. A few years ago, Ohio State lost a bad game to Virginia Tech. Went on to win the national championship. And nobody would have ever, in their wildest dreams, have imagined that the Ohio State would win the national championship that year. We now live in a world where losing in week 2 does not negate you from competing for a national championship later on down the line. And I think that's a good thing. But I don't know how you get there if you can't find a way to beat Northern Illinois at home. And credit to the Huskies. They deserve the win. But there are questions at Notre Dame. And I don't know how loud and persistent those questions will be if they can't really, frankly, kick some ass the next couple of times out to leave no doubt. It can be a rallying point. You can turn it into a positive. I know that the night is darkest before the dawn, but I wouldn't feel real optimistic about Notre Dame in 2024 after what you saw on Saturday. Sunday, so we're going to take a look at the Sunday Stiff Arm Trophy update. I'll tell you who I would vote for if my Heisman ballot was due today. Is that ridiculous to do in week 2? Yes, that's why we're doing it. I would vote for Boise State running back Ashton Jeanty. He had 192 yards and 3 touchdowns in a narrow loss to Oregon. At Boise State, he rushed for 7.5 yards per carry against a top 5 opponent in a game that they should have won and didn't. And the reason that they were in the damn game was 1, Oregon kept turning the ball over and trying to give it to Boise State, and 2, because Ashton Jeanty can play football good-like. Through 2 games, 459 yards and 9 touchdowns. Last year was the most productive group of 5 running back in America at 1,300 yards and 14 touchdowns. He has 9 touchdowns through 2 games. So Ashton Jeanty would be my Heisman Trophy vote right this second. Quinn Ewers looked like the number 1 overall pick against the Michigan Wolverines on Saturday in a game I probably could have spent another 10, 15 minutes talking about, because the idea that the panelists on Big Noon Kickoff were going to tell you that they thought it was going to be a close 1-score game. I realize the guys from Fox Sports aren't going to tell you that they think a game's going to be an ass kicking because they want you to stick around and watch the game. But the idea that they were going to say, Michigan might pull it out in the end. Nobody in America thought Michigan had a chance to win that game yesterday, and Texas did whatever they wanted to. You know why? Because they have a very good quarterback behind center. Quinn Ewers played like the number 1 overall pick on Saturday. So I would put him at number 2. And Jackson Dart, the Ole Miss quarterback, leads America in passing yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. I would put him at number 3 on my list for the Revs. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on a podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.